Tonight, we're not here to fix anything, not to understand everything, not to become someone better before you're allowed to rest. This is a quiet space where we gently let go and return to inner peace through soft Zen stories inspired by the Buddha, shared slowly so your mind can soften and your body can rest. Maybe today asked a little too much from you. Too many thoughts, too many worries, too many small things you tried to hold together. And maybe, just for this moment, you're ready to set them down. Here, you don't need to improve yourself. You don't need to solve tomorrow. You are already enough simply by being here, breathing quietly. Just for a moment. Where are you listening from tonight? Wherever you are, I'm grateful you're here, sharing this quiet space. Let your breath slow as if it remembers the way home. Let your shoulders soften like they no longer need to carry the world. Tonight, we'll listen to a simple story. A story from ordinary life, carrying a small thread of Zen and Buddhist wisdom. Not to give you more to think about, but to help you loosen your grip. Because suffering rarely ends by force. It softens when we stop holding it so tightly. There's nothing to rush, nothing to achieve, only a gentle drifting into rest, into stillness. Whether you stay awake or slowly fall asleep, this moment is already enough. And now, we begin tonight's journey with these Zen stories. There are moments when the mind feels crowded, not because anything is wrong, but because everything wants attention at the same time. Thoughts line up, overlap, interrupt each other. One leads to the next so quickly, it's hard to tell where the first one even began. It often happens while driving at night. The road stretches forward dark and steady. Street lights pass at a regular pace, each one appearing glowing briefly, then slipping behind. The radio is off. The car moves smoothly, almost on its own. Hands rest lightly on the steering wheel, familiar with this route, not needing instructions. Above the windshield, the sky is wide, not perfectly clear. There are clouds drifting across it, thin in some places, heavier in others. They move slowly, quietly changing shape without asking permission. None of them stay for long. At first, they barely register. Attention is still busy elsewhere. A conversation from earlier in the day replays itself. A sentence that could have been said better. A decision that might matter later. The mind jumps ahead, then loops back, then jumps again. It feels important, urgent, like something needs to be solved before the drive ends. Then at a red light, there's a pause. The car stops. The engine idles. The light above glows steadily. And without trying to, the eyes lift slightly, catching the movement of clouds against the night sky. They're just there. No struggle, no rush, no effort to hold their shape. A thought passes through the mind, almost like a whisper. Those are just clouds. It's not a deep insight. Not something to write down or remember. Just an observation. Simple, obvious, and yet it changes something. The next thought that comes doesn't feel as solid as before. It shows up, makes its point, then fades a little at the edges. Another thought follows, then another. But instead of piling on top of each other, they start to feel more like the clouds overhead, passing through a space that isn't affected by them. The sky doesn't tighten when clouds appear. It doesn't get anxious. It doesn't try to push them away or hold on to them longer than necessary. It just stays open. Most people live as if their thoughts are the sky itself, as if every idea, every worry, every mental image defines who they are. So when the clouds get heavy, the whole inner world feels heavy too. But driving under the night sky makes something quietly clear. The clouds move, the sky remains. A truck passes in the opposite lane, headlights flashing briefly through the windshield. The light changes. The car moves again. The road continues. Thoughts still appear. Planning, remembering, imagining. That doesn't stop, but there's more space around them now. They're noticed, not followed. Seen, not argued with. A worry floats by. What if tomorrow doesn't go well? It's there for a moment. Then it drifts. Another thought, I should have handled that differently. It lingers a bit longer, then thins out. Nothing is forced. Nothing is corrected. The mind isn't being trained or disciplined. It's simply being observed from a different place. Like standing back far enough to see the sky instead of staring at a single cloud. There's a subtle relief in that shift. Not excitement, not happiness, just relief. The kind that comes when pressure eases slightly, when effort drops without collapsing. The drive continues. Familiar turns, familiar signs. The body handles it all without commentary. Muscles know what to do. Breath finds its own rhythm. Overthinking usually feels like being inside the clouds, surrounded, limited, unable to see beyond what's right in front of you. But moments like this remind you that there's always more space than the mind suggests. The sky doesn't need to be cleared to be blue. It's blue even when you can't see it. And the mind doesn't need to get rid of thoughts to be at ease. It only needs to stop mistaking them for the whole picture. As the car turns onto a quieter street, the clouds thin out. A patch of open sky appears darker and deeper than the rest. It's been there the entire time, unnoticed, unchanged. The thoughts keep moving. But something underneath stays still. The car slows as it turns onto a quieter road. Fewer streetlights here, longer stretches of darkness between them. The kind of road that feels different at night, even though it's the same one driven every other day. The sky opens up a little more. There are still clouds drifting through, but now they're easier to see. Their edges glow faintly when they pass in front of the moon, then fade back into the dark. They don't seem in a hurry. They don't seem lost. They just move, responding to currents no one inside the car needs to understand. Thoughts continue in much the same way. They arrive, they change shape. They overlap for a moment, then separate again. Some feel heavier than others. Some pass quickly. A few linger, hanging in place like thick clouds that refuse to thin out. But even the heavier ones don't feel as overwhelming anymore. There's a growing sense of distance, not emotional distance, but perspective. The kind that lets things exist without being pulled into them, like watching weather from indoors instead of standing out in the rain. A familiar worry shows up again. The kind that usually grabs attention immediately. The mind starts to lean toward it almost automatically, ready to engage, to solve, to prepare. Then it pauses. The cloud is noticed. That's all. No arguing with it. No pushing it away. No trying to make it disappear. Just noticing that it's there and that it's not the sky itself. Without resistance, the thought loses some of its urgency. It's still present, but it no longer demands a response. It floats alongside the drive instead of taking control of it. The car passes a small park. Empty swings move slightly in the breeze. A single street lamp lights the sidewalk. Everything feels quiet, held in place for the night. This is often how the mind settles, not by becoming empty, but by becoming wide. When attention is narrow, every thought feels intense, important, personal. But when attention widens, thoughts are given room to breathe. They don't need to be contained or fixed. They can come and go on their own. The sky doesn't select which clouds are allowed. It doesn't label them good or bad. It doesn't rush them along or ask them to stay. It simply remains. The body senses this too. The grip on the steering wheel softens slightly. Shoulders drop. The jaw unclenches without instruction. Breathing deepens in a way that feels unplanned. Nothing has changed externally. The road is the same. The destination hasn't moved. Tomorrow is still tomorrow. But the inner experience is different. Overthinking feeds on identification, the belief that every thought needs to be owned, answered, or acted on. When that belief loosens even slightly, the mind finds space it forgot existed. A cloud thickens overhead. For a moment, the moon disappears completely. Darkness deepens. Then slowly the moon reappears at the edge. Light returns. The cloud continues on its way, leaving no trace behind. The sky didn't lose anything while it was hidden. It didn't need to struggle to come back. There's comfort in that. The car pulls into a familiar driveway. The engine turns off. Silence settles in deeper now, without the hum of movement. The sky is still there above the roof, unseen but unchanged. Thoughts are still present too. A few last ones hover at the edges of awareness. But they feel less solid than before, less convincing, like clouds seen from far away. The door opens. The night air feels cool against the skin. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks once, then goes quiet. The world seems to be resting. Inside, lights remain off. No need to brighten the space. Darkness feels friendly now, not empty. The sky hasn't gone anywhere, and neither has the space behind the thoughts. They'll return. The clouds always do. Different shapes, different densities, different moods. That's not a problem. What matters is remembering this. You don't have to chase them, fight them, or become them. They can move across you, and you can remain, just like the sky. The trail isn't difficult. Just a narrow dirt path winding through low trees, the kind people take when they want to move without thinking too much. He didn't plan to come here. He only meant to step outside for a bit to walk off a feeling he couldn't quite name. The air is cool enough to be noticeable. Not cold, just clean. He adjusts the strap of the water bottle across his chest and starts walking, shoes crunching softly against gravel and fallen leaves. There's a habit he has that shows up most clearly on days like this. A quiet scanning. As if something important might appear just ahead and he doesn't want to miss it. Relief, motivation, a sign that things are finally lining up. He's been waiting for that feeling for a long time. At work, he tells himself things will feel better after the next milestone, after the next paycheck, after the next compliment. In relationships, he waits for reassurance to arrive in the right tone at the right time. He's learned to measure his mood by what's coming toward him, not by what's already here. The trail bends and the sound reaches him before the sight. Water. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a steady moving sound, like a conversation happening nearby that you don't need to join. He follows it instinctively, stepping off the main path onto a smaller one that leads downhill. The stream is narrower than he expected. Clear water moving over smooth stones, catching the light in small, shifting patterns. It doesn't rush. It doesn't pause. It simply keeps going. He crouches and rests his hands on his knees, watching for a moment. There's no sign explaining where it comes from. No marker pointing upstream. It just is. He unscrews the cap of his bottle and dips it into the water, filling it slowly. The bottle grows heavier in his hand. He screws the cap back on and takes a drink. The water is cold, plain, exactly what water is supposed to be. As he straightens up, a thought surfaces, simple and unsettling. How long have I been waiting to be filled? The question isn't accusing, just curious. It lands the way certain truths do, quietly, when you finally stop talking over them. He thinks about the way he's been treating happiness like something that arrives from the outside, something that shows up when conditions are right, when people respond the way he hopes, when circumstances soften enough to allow him to relax. Like a cup held out, always angled forward. The stream doesn't work that way. It doesn't wait to be poured into. It doesn't pause until someone needs it. It moves because there is movement. It flows because something within it is already flowing. He sits on a flat rock by the edge, close enough to feel the coolness rising from the water. His shoulders drop slightly. He hadn't noticed how tight they were. There's a faint embarrassment in realizing how much pressure he's put on other people, on work, on future versions of himself, to supply a feeling he thought was missing. As if peace were a delivery he kept tracking, wondering why it was always delayed. The sound of water keeps going unbothered by his thoughts. He watches leaves drift into the stream, circle briefly in a slow eddy, then continue on. None of them seem to struggle. None of them try to stay where they are. He's been doing the opposite, holding still while waiting for something to arrive, holding his breath in small ways all day long. He takes another sip from the bottle, slower this time. The water settles easily. no effort required. It occurs to him that maybe happiness doesn't come from being filled. Maybe it comes from remembering that there's already a source inside one that doesn't depend on timing or approval or outcomes. Not excitement, not constant joy, just a quiet sense of enough. He stands and screws the bottle cap tighter, adjusting the strap again. The stream continues behind him, unchanged by his presence. He doesn't feel like he's learned something new. It feels more like he's stopped overlooking something obvious. As he steps back onto the main trail, his pace is different. Not slower, just less urgent. Like he's no longer racing toward a future moment that's supposed to fix the present. The path curves upward, away from the water, but the sound lingers for a while. Soft, steady, and somewhere beneath his thoughts, something begins to shift. Not because anything was added, but because he's starting to sense what was already flowing. He doesn't leave the trail right away. Instead of turning back toward the parking lot, he keeps walking, following the path as it climbs gently away from the stream. The sound of water fades, replaced by the softer rhythm of his own footsteps. Gravel shifts under his shoes. A bird flutters somewhere overhead, then goes quiet. There's a familiar restlessness in him, even now. A small urge to check his phone, to capture the moment, or at least mark it somehow. He notices the urge and lets it pass. The trail doesn't ask for proof that he's here. As he walks, his mind drifts back to the many ways he's tried to make himself feel complete. Long hours, careful planning, reading the right books, waiting for the right words from the right people. None of it was wrong exactly. It just never lasted. The sense of relief always slipped away, like water poured into a cracked cup. He slows when the path narrows. Up ahead, the trees thin and sunlight filters through in uneven patches. He steps into one of them and stops, feeling the warmth on his face. It's brief. A cloud passes and the light shifts again. The sun didn't stop shining, he thinks. It was just covered for a moment. The thought feels connected to the stream in a way he can't quite explain yet. He spent years believing that happiness is something that happens when life cooperates, when work is manageable, when relationships feel smooth, when there's nothing waiting to go wrong. As if peace requires constant agreement from the world. But the stream didn't ask the rocks to move. It didn't negotiate with fallen branches or uneven ground. It flowed around what was there, shaped by it, but not stopped by it. The movement came from within, not from permission granted outside. He sits on a fallen log and rests his elbows on his knees. The forest is quiet enough now that he can hear his own breathing, in and out. Steady. It surprises him how naturally it finds its rhythm when he stops interfering. A memory surfaces of a time he felt genuinely okay without trying. Not excited, not accomplished, just okay. He can't remember what he was doing then, only that he wasn't waiting for anything to change. That feeling had a source too. He's been treating happiness like a result, when maybe it's more like a current, something you notice when you stop standing in its way. The bottle presses lightly against his side as he shifts. It's still half full. He takes another sip, then sets it down beside him. He doesn't feel the need to finish it. The water will be there when he's thirsty again. That too feels like a small lesson, though he doesn't frame it that way. He stands and continues walking the trail, leveling out as it approaches the end. The sounds of the forest slowly give way to distant traffic, a reminder that the world he left is still waiting. Emails, conversations, responsibilities, none of them have vanished. But something is loosened. He doesn't feel like he has to arrive back there, already filled, already calm, already fixed. He can return as he is, with whatever is flowing naturally and whatever isn't. At the edge of the trail, he pauses and looks back once in the direction of the stream he can no longer hear. He doesn't feel separated from it. The movement it showed him doesn't seem confined to that place. It's in his steps now, in his breath, in the way his thoughts move through and out. He heads toward the car, the bottle tapping lightly against his hip with each step. The sound is steady, almost rhythmic, a reminder that something is already moving with him. He doesn't expect the feeling to last forever. He knows there will be days when he forgets this entirely, when he waits again, when he holds himself like an empty container. But tonight that doesn't matter. Right now he's not waiting to be filled. He's remembering where the flow begins. The house felt different after the funeral. Not emptier exactly, just quieter in a way that didn't belong to the time of day. The afternoon light still came through the kitchen window at the same angle. The refrigerator still hummed. A neighbor's car door still opened and closed somewhere down the street. All the ordinary sounds were there, and yet something fundamental had shifted. A person stood at the kitchen counter holding a mug that had gone cold. Tea forgotten. Hands wrapped around ceramic more for grounding than warmth. On the counter lay a folded program from the service, the paper already soft from being handled too many times. There had been words at the funeral, kind ones, careful ones. People saying the same sentences in slightly different ways. They're at peace now. They lived a good life. I can't imagine what you're going through. All of it meant well. None of it quite landed. Grief has a way of making language feel thin, like it can't carry the weight it's being asked to hold. What stayed wasn't the speeches. It was the quiet moments between them. The way people avoided eye contact for a second too long. The way hugs lingered, then released. The way everyone eventually went home. The door had closed. Shoes were taken off. The house returned to its usual shape. And that was when the loneliness arrived. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a deep sense that something important was missing, not just a person, but a shared understanding. A feeling that this kind of pain was somehow personal, isolating, like it had chosen this house specifically. The mind whispered questions it didn't expect. Why us? Why now? Why like this? There was no anger in the questions, just confusion, a search for footing. On the stove, a pot sat unused. The thought of cooking felt strange. Eating felt optional. The body didn't know what it needed, only that it was tired. At some point, the mug was set down. The program was unfolded, then folded again, not for reading, but for something to do with the hands. The paper made a soft sound, almost comforting in its predictability. Grief doesn't always come as waves. Sometimes it comes as stillness, a pause where everything else keeps moving and you don't. Outside, the street looked the same as it always did. Houses lined up neatly, lawns trimmed, lights beginning to turn on one by one as evening approached. Through the window you could see into other homes. Just glimpses. A family setting the table. Someone walking past with a phone pressed to their ear. A television flickering blue light against a wall. Life continuing. There was a strange comfort in that, mixed with something sharper. How could the world keep going when something so final had happened? How could other houses still be warm and noisy when this one felt so hollow? Grief often brings a second pain with it, the belief that you're alone in it, that this kind of loss has singled you out, that no one else could possibly understand this particular shape of absence. The body felt heavy, as if gravity had increased slightly, just enough to make standing longer than necessary. A cabinet door was opened. Inside, jars sat in neat rows. Rice, pasta, spices. A small jar of mustard seeds tucked into the corner, bought months ago for a recipe that never happened. The jar was taken down, then set back. Not needed. Not today. Still the image stayed. A seed so small you could lose it between your fingers. A thing that looks insignificant until you realize what it can grow into. The mind wandered not by choice, but by habit. To memories. To the last conversation. To the things that hadn't been said. To the ordinary moments that now felt precious because they couldn't happen again. There was pain there, the first kind. Clean, direct, impossible to avoid. And then there was something else layered on top. A sense of being uniquely broken. A feeling that this loss had set this house apart from all the others on the street. That was the second pain. Quieter, but heavier. Grief says, this hurts. Isolation says, you're the only one. The body believed it, at least for a moment. Dinner time came and went. The sky outside deepened into blue. Porch lights flicked on. Somewhere, laughter drifted faintly through an open window. The sound landed gently, then stung. Inside this house, silence pressed in. The person leaned against the counter, letting weight rest where it wanted to. Not trying to stand up straight, not trying to be strong, just letting the moment be what it was. There was no insight yet, no lesson forming. Just the raw experience of absence, of love, having nowhere to go. If someone had knocked on the door, then offering wisdom or reassurance, it would have been too much. Grief doesn't want answers right away. It wants permission. Permission to be heavy. Permission to be slow. Permission to not make sense. The house held that permission quietly. Outside, more lights came on, house after house, one by one. Each window glowing with its own version of evening. And without realizing it, something subtle began to shift. Not relief, not acceptance, just a noticing. Every one of those lit windows held a story. Every one of those houses would at some point know this feeling. Loss didn't belong to this house alone. The thought didn't erase the pain, it didn't shrink it, but it changed its texture slightly from sharp isolation to shared human weight. Grief wasn't a punishment, it was a passage every door would eventually open to. The mustard seed sat quietly in its jar, unremarkable, waiting. And somewhere beneath the ache, a question began to form. Not yet clear enough to answer, but clear enough to soften the edges of loneliness. If this pain visits every home, then maybe I am not as alone as it feels right now. As evening settled in the street outside softened, traffic thinned, the air cooled, porch lights stayed on steady and patient, like quiet witnesses to ordinary lives unfolding behind closed doors. Inside the house, nothing dramatic happened. No breakthrough, no sudden calm. Just a gradual easing of the sense that grief had built a wall between this home and the rest of the world. The pain was still there. That hadn't changed. Loss doesn't disappear because it's understood. It stays reshaping itself over time. But something important was beginning to loosen. The idea that this pain was unique. Grief often tells a very convincing story. No one has ever felt this exact loss in this exact way. And in one sense, that's true. Every relationship is singular. Every absence has its own shape. But the experience of loss itself is deeply shared even when it feels unbearably personal. That's what makes it so heavy, and also what makes it human. The person moved slowly through the kitchen, turning off unused lights, rinsing the forgotten mug, setting it upside down on the drying rack. Small actions, familiar motions. They didn't fix anything. They just brought the body back into the present moment, one movement at a time. Outside, across the street, a window went dark. Somewhere else, another light stayed on late. Lives moving at different rhythms. Joy in some rooms, worry in others. Grief, too, behind more doors than anyone could count. No house is spared forever. That thought landed gently, not as a warning, as a recognition. Loss is not a mistake. It's not a punishment. It's not something that went wrong. It's what happens when love exists. The story of the mustard seed doesn't say grief can be avoided. It says it is shared. That death and the pain it brings visits every household eventually. Not all at once, not in the same way, but without exception. The idea doesn't take the pain away. It does something quieter. It returns grief to the world. Instead of carrying it alone as if it were proof of isolation, the pain becomes part of a larger human pattern. Something that has been felt before. Something that will be felt again. Something that doesn't mean you've been singled out. That realization doesn't rush in like comfort. It arrives slowly, like dusk. Gradual, almost unnoticeable at first. The person stood by the window again, looking out at the row of houses. Some with curtains drawn, some open. Each one holding its own private history of love and loss, most of it invisible from the outside. It was strangely grounding. Grief had made the world feel smaller, earlier narrowed down to this one house, this one absence. Now the world felt wider again. Still painful, but less suffocating. There was room to breathe inside the pain. The mustard seed jar came back to mind, not because it offered hope in a dramatic sense, but because of what it represented. A reminder that even the smallest things can carry immense meaning. That growth and loss are intertwined. That nothing precious comes without vulnerability. The seed itself is insignificant. It doesn't announce what it will become. It just is. Grief is similar. It doesn't come with instructions. It doesn't promise transformation. It simply arrives when love has nowhere else to go. And in that way, it connects people more than it separates them. Later, the lights in the kitchen were turned off. The house settled into its nighttime sounds. The kind that only appear when activity stops, the soft creak of cooling walls, the distant hum of appliances, the faint rush of air through vents. In the quiet, the absence was still felt. A chair left empty, a voice missing from memory. That didn't change, but the sense of being alone with it had shifted. Somewhere else tonight, someone else was standing in their kitchen feeling something similar. Somewhere else, a different house was holding the same heavy stillness. Different names, different stories. The same human ache. Grief hadn't chosen this house. It had simply arrived here as it does everywhere. That understanding didn't close the wound, but it kept it from becoming a wall. The night moved on, indifferent but gentle. Time continued not to erase but to carry. And in that ordinary continuation, there was a quiet truth. You don't walk through loss alone, even when it feels that way. Every house has known this knock. Every heart in time learns how to open the door. It started the way it usually does now. Not with shouting, not with a fight. Just a screen glowing in the dark and a feeling that something needs to be answered. The living room was quiet. The kind of quiet that feels louder at night. The TV was off. A lamp in the corner cast a soft circle of light over the couch and a coffee table that still held a mug from earlier. Outside the window, a few cars passed their headlights, sliding across the walls and disappearing. The phone buzzed once, then again. A message, a comment, a small thing technically. One line from someone who didn't know the full story, didn't know the effort, didn't know the context. But somehow they had confidence anyway. Enough confidence to be careless. The person on the couch read it once, then again slower. The words didn't change, but the body did. The chest tightened. The stomach dropped slightly. A warm rush rose up the neck like a match being struck. There's a certain kind of anger that doesn't feel like anger. It feels like justice. It feels like if you don't respond, you're letting something slide. It feels like silence equals weakness. It feels like you're being erased unless you write yourself back into the conversation. The thumbs hovered over the keyboard. At first, the reply was simple, short, controlled. Then it got sharper. A sentence was added, then another. Something clever, something cutting. The kind of line that would make the other person pause and feel the sting. The heart sped up just a little, not from fear, but from focus. The body narrowing in on a target. This part always felt like power. But then in the middle of typing, the person noticed their own breathing. It was thin, high in the chest, like the body was preparing for impact. Not their impact, their own. The phone screen reflected in the dark window like a small square moon. The room around it stayed calm, indifferent. The couch supported the weight. The lamp continued to glow. Nothing in the space agreed that this was an emergency, and still the mind insisted it was. A memory surfaced from a long time ago. Not from childhood, but from a backyard somewhere. Maybe a friend's house, maybe a cousin's. The details didn't matter. Someone had been throwing a boomerang. It looked like a toy, harmless. But it didn't move like a toy. It flew out with confidence, curved through the air, and then came back fast. The first time it came back beautifully, landing almost where it started. The second time it returned lower. It clipped someone's arm. Not a serious injury, but enough to make everyone suddenly cautious. It wasn't the throw outward that hurt, it was the return. That image now sat beside the unfinished message on the phone. The person paused with their thumbs still hovering. The anger hadn't faded. The urge to hit send was still strong. It felt clean and satisfying in the mind, like snapping something into place, but the body didn't feel clean. The body felt like it was bracing. A quiet question rose up, not as a moral warning, but as a practical one. What happens in me after I send this because the other person might feel embarrassed for 5 seconds? They might not. They might reply, or they might ignore it. They might even enjoy the fight. But the person on the couch would still be here. Still in this room. Still in this body. Still with a nervous system that now had a reason to stay awake. The reply on the screen suddenly looked less like strength and more like fuel. The mind tried to justify it. They deserve it. They started it. They should learn. And maybe some of that was true. But truth doesn't always equal peace. The person deleted one sentence, then another. The message got shorter, then sharper again, then softer, then empty. The cursor blinked in the text box like a steady heartbeat, patient and quiet. The phone buzzed again, another notification from somewhere else, another tiny tug. The world was full of tugs like this now. Little hooks that could pull you into someone else's mood in seconds. The person set the phone face down on the couch for a moment, as if placing a hot object onto fabric. The body exhaled without being told. The shoulders lowered slightly. Anger still lived in the chest, but it had shifted. It no longer felt like a weapon waiting to be used. It felt like heat that needed somewhere to go. The person reached for the mug on the table. Cold now. The smell of old coffee. A reminder that time had passed while the mind kept spinning in place. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed. A dog barked once and stopped. The world kept moving with or without the argument. The phone stayed face down. Not because forgiveness was achieved, not because the person suddenly became above it all, just because in that moment it became clear throwing the boomerang doesn't only aim outward, it always comes back. The phone stayed face down longer than expected. Not out of discipline, but because nothing urgent rose up to replace it. The room felt unchanged. Same lamp, same couch, same quiet hum of the night moving outside the window. But inside the body, there was a slight shift, like pressure being released from a sealed container. The anger hadn't disappeared. It lingered warm and restless, moving through the chest and shoulders. But without the screen in hand, it didn't know where to aim itself. That was when the return began. Not dramatic, not immediate. It showed up as a familiar restlessness, a need to keep thinking, to replay what had almost been said, to imagine how it might have landed, to picture the other person's reaction, whether they'd felt embarrassed, corrected, or quietly defeated. Even without sending the message, the mind tried to throw it again. This was the part people rarely talk about. The boomerang doesn't always come back through action. Sometimes it returns through rumination. The body noticed first. The jaw tightened again. The breath shortened. The shoulders crept up as if preparing for another round. The person shifted position on the couch, adjusting the pillow behind their back. The fabric rustled softly. The small movement helped. Not much, but enough to bring awareness back into the body. A thought arrived, simple and grounding. I'm still holding it. The boomerang wasn't in the air anymore. It hadn't been thrown. But it was still in the hand, ready. The realization didn't come with blame, just clarity. Anger often promises resolution, but what it really delivers is continuation. As long as the argument stays alive, inside the nervous system doesn't know it's safe. It stays alert, scanning for the next cue. Sleep comes late. Muscles don't fully rest. Even silence feels watchful. The person reached for the phone again, this time without flipping it over, just feeling its weight through the fabric of the couch. Solid, inert, not demanding anything. There was a memory of other times this had happened. Other nights spent rehearsing messages. Other mornings waking up tired even when no words had been exchanged. The cost had always been paid quietly in energy, in mood and patience the next day. Forgiveness seen from this angle wasn't moral. It was economical. Every minute spent circling the same grievance took something. Focus, ease, rest. It didn't matter who was right if the bill kept arriving. The person stood up and carried the mug to the sink. The sound of ceramic touching metal was dull and ordinary. Water ran briefly, rinsing the residue away. The mug was placed upside down on the drying rack. Done. Simple actions have a way of ending things. Back in the living room, the lamp was dimmed slightly. The light softened, pulling shadows closer. The room felt less like a stage and more like a place to land. The anger was still present, but it had changed shape. No longer sharp. More like a dull heat slowly cooling as it spread out. The boomerang image returned gentler now, not flying through the air, just resting on the ground, harmless once it wasn't thrown. There was a quiet understanding that not every feeling needs an outlet in the world. Some feelings are meant to move through the body and leave. The phone was picked up and placed on the table screen, down out of reach. Not hidden, just not central. The person sat back on the couch, letting their weight sink in. The breath found its way lower, fuller. The mind drifted not toward the argument, but toward nothing in particular. There would be other comments, other misunderstandings, other moments when throwing the boomerang would feel tempting. But for now, choosing not to throw it wasn't weakness. It was choosing not to be hit by it later. The room stayed quiet. The night kept moving. And somewhere in that ordinary stillness, the body learned what peace feels like when it isn't borrowed from winning. It starts with something small. So small it almost feels silly to notice. A comment that didn't land quite right. A look that was hard to read. A message that didn't get a reply as quickly as expected. Nothing that should matter this much. And yet it does. The kitchen is quiet. Late evening quiet. The kind where appliances make more noise than people. A mug sits on the counter, tea still steaming gently. The spoon rests inside it, unmoving. At least for now. The thought arrives without warning. Did I misunderstand that it sounds harmless, curious, reasonable? The spoon moves. Just once, a slow stir. The surface of the tea shifts circles, forming steam rising unevenly. Nothing dramatic, just motion. Another thought follows. Maybe they meant something else. The spoon turns again, this time a little faster. The tea darkens as leaves swirl up from the bottom. What was clear a moment ago becomes cloudy. Patterns overlap. It's harder to see through now. The mind does the same thing. One small concern pulls another into it. That one connects to a memory. The memory brings up an old feeling. Soon the original moment, the comment, the look, the message barely matters anymore. It's been buried under layers of interpretation. The spoon keeps moving. There's a familiar sense of urgency, as if stopping now would be irresponsible, as if the truth is hiding somewhere in the motion, waiting to be uncovered if the stirring continues just a bit longer. But the harder the tea is stirred, the less clear it becomes. The mug is lifted. A sip is taken too soon. The heat surprises the mouth slightly. Not painful, just enough to cause a pause. That pause matters. In that brief stillness, it's noticeable how tight the jaw is, how shallow the breath has become, how much energy is being spent on something that began as almost nothing. This is how overthinking grows. Not from big problems, but from small ones given too much movement, too much attention, too many turns of the spoon. A storm doesn't need a sky. Sometimes a cup is enough. The spoon is set down on the counter. It makes a soft clink against the ceramic. The sound is small, but it cuts through the noise in the mind more effectively than expected. Without the stirring, the tea doesn't settle immediately. It keeps moving for a while. Currents cross. Leaves spin lazily before sinking again. The mind behaves the same way. Even when attention stops feeding it, thoughts don't vanish on command. They continue their motion out of habit. Old momentum carrying them forward. There's a temptation to stir again, to check, to make sure nothing important is being missed, to regain a sense of control. But instead there's watching, just watching. The tea slowly begins to clear, not completely, not perfectly, but enough that shapes start to soften. The surface smooths out. Steam rises evenly again. Nothing new was added. Nothing was fixed. The storm quieted because it was no longer being created. This realization doesn't arrive as a lesson. It arrives as relief. Quiet, understated relief. The kind that doesn't need to be named. The mug is held in both hands now. Warmth seeps into the palms. The body responds before the mind does, shoulders easing slightly. Breath lengthening without instruction. The original thought still exists somewhere in the background. It hasn't been solved. No conclusion has been reached. And yet it no longer feels urgent. It was never the size of the issue that caused the strain. It was the constant stirring. The kitchen remains the same. Same counter, same mug, same quiet hum of appliances. But inside, something has shifted. The storm is still capable of returning. All it would take is one more stir, one more round of what if, or maybe, or I should figure this out right now, but for the moment, the spoon stays down, and the tea is allowed to be just tea. The mug stays on the counter untouched for a while. The tea continues to cool slowly without being asked to. Steam thins, then fades. What was once restless begins to settle into something quieter, something more readable. The same happens inside. Thoughts don't disappear just because the spoon has been set down. They drift. They cross paths. A few bump into each other gently like leftover waves after a boat has passed. But there's less force behind them now, less urgency pushing them forward. This is the part that often gets missed. People assume calm arrives when problems are solved, when answers are found, when clarity is achieved. But often calm arrives earlier than that, right at the moment when we stop adding motion. The mind returns to the original moment. The comment, the look, the delayed reply. Seen now without the swirl around it, it looks smaller. Not unimportant, just limited. One moment among many, no longer carrying the weight of every past experience or imagined future. It's easier to see how narrow the view had become. When attention locks onto one small detail, everything else falls away. Context disappears. Perspective shrinks. The world reduces itself to a single cup being shaken over and over until the movement feels like chaos. But the storm was never in the tea. It was in the stirring. The mug is lifted again. This time the sip is careful. The temperature is right. The taste is mild, ordinary, nothing remarkable. And yet it feels different now. Without the constant movement, the tea doesn't demand attention. It doesn't need to be managed. It simply exists steady and quiet. There's a soft recognition that the same could be true for the mind. Overthinking doesn't usually come from deep curiosity or genuine concern. It comes from a subtle fear that if we don't keep stirring, something will be missed. Something will go wrong. Something important will slip through unnoticed. But standing here holding a calm cup of tea, that fear feels less convincing. Nothing collapsed when the stirring stopped. Nothing urgent appeared. Nothing was lost. The kitchen clock ticks softly. Time continues indifferent to how much attention it's given. The night deepens outside the window. Lights in nearby buildings turn off one by one. The mind notices this too. The way the world keeps moving without commentary, without analysis, without asking to be understood. Perspective widens. That small moment from earlier doesn't disappear. It just finds its proper size. One piece of a much larger picture. Not a verdict, not a threat, just a moment that happened and then passed. This widening is gentle, not forced. It doesn't feel like thinking differently. It feels like seeing more. The spoon remains on the counter where it was left. Its presence is almost symbolic now, a reminder of how easily things can be set into motion and how easily they can be left alone. There's no rule against stirring, no vow to never think again. Tomorrow will bring new moments, new reactions, new reasons to pick up the spoon. But tonight, there's understanding. A storm doesn't need to be fought. It often just needs to stop being created. The mug is placed in the sink. Water runs briefly, rinsing the inside clean. No scrubbing. No effort. Just a simple reset. The body moves more slowly now. Lights are dimmed. The kitchen fades into shadow. Nothing calls for attention anymore. Inside, the mind follows suit. Thoughts stretch out. Spaces between them grow longer. Not empty, just quiet enough to rest in. The storm is gone. Not because it was defeated, not because it was solved, but because the stirring ended. And in that stillness, even small things are allowed to return to their natural shape. The bathroom light is too bright, but she leaves it on anyway. It's the only way to see what she's doing. The kid is in the tub, splashing gently with a plastic cup, making little waves that hit the sides and fall back again. The water is warm, the air is damp, and the mirror is already starting to fog around the edges. She kneels on the bath mat with a towel folded across her lap. One hand on the faucet, adjusting the temperature, the other steadying a bottle of shampoo so it doesn't tip. She moves in small, practiced motions, the kind you learn when you're doing 3 things at once without wanting it to feel chaotic. She's tired. Not the dramatic kind of tired where you're falling asleep standing up. The quieter kind. The kind that shows up in your shoulders, in the way your eyes stay a little tense, even when you're smiling, in the way your thoughts don't fully stop when the day is over. The kid laughs at something, maybe a bubble, maybe nothing. She laughs too automatically. It comes out soft. Real enough. She reaches into the tub and scoops a bit of water onto the kid's arm to rinse off soap. The water beads on the skin and runs down in thin lines. For a second, she watches it like she's never seen water before. A drop. Small, clear, unimportant looking. Her mind does what it often does when she's tired. It starts measuring. How much she did today, how much she didn't do, the messages she didn't reply to, the groceries she forgot, the fact that she still hasn't scheduled that appointment she keeps meaning to schedule, the way she snapped a little earlier when she didn't want to. She hates that part of herself, the part that keeps score, the part that acts like life is a test she's quietly failing. She takes a breath through her nose slow, and looks back at the tub. The kid is making soup with bath toys, stirring the water with complete confidence. The plastic cup dips and rises, and the water keeps responding, patient and endless. It's strange how something so ordinary can feel so big when you're worn down. She wipes a bit of water off the kid's cheek with her thumb. The skin is warm, alive, right here. On the edge of the tub, a drop of water clings to the porcelain. It trembles slightly when the kid kicks. It holds on, then finally lets go, sliding down and disappearing into the bath water. And something in her shifts. Not like a breakthrough, more like a widening. She's been feeling lately like she's just one drop. One small person with limited energy, limited patience, limited time. A drop trying to handle an ocean of needs. Work, home, relationships, bills, expectations. The constant background noise of the world. No wonder she feels like she's not enough. A drop is not enough to be an ocean. But that's the wrong comparison. Because a drop isn't separate from the ocean. It's ocean in a smaller shape. The thought comes quietly without any spiritual language attached. Just a simple recognition, like remembering something she knew as a kid and forgot when life got complicated. She looks at her hands. They're damp. A little pruny at the fingertips from water. Not perfect hands. Hands that have done dishes, wiped noses, typed emails, held steering wheels, carried bags. Hands that have tried. She's been treating herself like a single unit that has to perform perfectly to deserve rest. Like her worth depends on how clean she keeps everything, how calm she stays, how much she can hold. But what if she's part of something larger than her daily performance? Not larger in a mystical way. Larger in the way life is larger than one moment. Larger than one bad day. Larger than one sharp tone. Larger than one mistake. A drop can look small when you isolate it. But when you see where it belongs, it stops being small. The kid splashes again, sending a wave over the edge. Water spills onto the floor. She reaches for the towel and wipes it up. No panic, no frustration, just a quick cleanup. She notices that she didn't get mad, not because she's enlightened, because she's tired enough to stop insisting everything be perfect. The floor can be wet for a moment. The world doesn't end. The towel handles it. That feels like a clue. Maybe she doesn't have to clamp down so hard on every detail to be okay. She rinses the kid's hair, watching suds run down and dissolve into the water. Soap is there, then it's gone. The water stays. She thinks about all the feelings she's had today, irritation, guilt, worry, and how she keeps assuming they're permanent. How she keeps acting like each emotion defines her, like each moment is a verdict. But emotions are more like soap. They show up, they swirl, and they dissolve. Something stays underneath them, something wider. She reaches for the cup and pours warm water gently over the kid's head. The kid squeezes their eyes shut and squeals, then laughs again. The sound bounces off the tile walls and lands in her chest, softening it. She looks at the water again, not as a task, as a reminder. She's not just a drop trying to survive the ocean. She's the ocean showing up as a drop. And that changes how the weight feels. She drains the tub slowly. The water circles the drain, pulling the remaining bubbles into a small spinning pattern before they disappear. The sound is steady and familiar, something she's heard hundreds of times before. Tonight she watches it a little longer than usual. The kid steps out wrapped in a towel, warm and clean, and already reaching for pajamas. She dries small arms and legs, the movements automatic now learned through repetition. When she finishes, the kid runs off toward the bedroom, leaving behind a trail of damp footprints that fade as quickly as they appear. She stays in the bathroom for a moment. The mirror is fogged over completely now. She wipes a clear circle with her sleeve and looks at her reflection. Her face looks the same as it always does at this hour. Tired eyes, slight crease between her brows, hair pulled back without much thought. She notices the urge to evaluate, to decide whether she looks okay, whether she looks like someone who has it together. She lets the urge pass. Instead, she looks at herself the way she looked at the water, without narrowing the frame too much. She sees someone standing in a warm room after a long day still showing up. Someone whose energy isn't endless, but whose care keeps finding a way to move. Someone who has been measuring herself as if she were alone when she isn't. She turns off the light and walks down the hallway, following the soft sounds of bedtime routines. Pajamas rustling, a book being dropped, a voice asking a question that doesn't need a perfect answer. Later, when the lights are off and the house finally quiets, she sits on the edge of the couch with a glass of water in her hand. She takes a sip and feels it move easily down her throat, no effort required. It's strange how much she's resisted ease. She's been telling herself that if she relaxes too much, things will fall apart. That if she doesn't keep track of every detail, she'll fail someone. That if she stops holding everything tightly, she'll be exposed as not enough. But water doesn't work like that. It holds what it can, releases what it can't, and keeps moving anyway. She thinks about the times today she felt overwhelmed, how those moments felt total while they were happening, like the whole truth. And yet, here she is now, breathing normally, the day already thinning at the edges. The feelings didn't last. They never do. She's been confusing intensity with importance, treating every emotional surge as a final statement about who she is. But an ocean doesn't become small just because a wave rises. She rests her head back against the couch and closes her eyes for a moment. Not to sleep, just to stop scanning. Her body settles into the cushions without instruction. She notices her breath again. In, out. It doesn't feel heroic. It feels sufficient. There's relief in realizing she doesn't have to hold herself together as a single point. She doesn't have to be perfectly calm, perfectly kind, perfectly patient to be worthy of rest. She's allowed to have ripples. She's allowed to have storms. None of it takes away the depth underneath. She finishes the water and sets the glass on the table. A small ring of moisture forms beneath it. She wipes it away with her sleeve, then smiles faintly at herself. Some habits stay. She stands and turns off the last light, the house slipping into darkness without resistance. In the quiet, she feels something steady beneath the usual noise of her thoughts. Not confidence, not certainty, just space. Enough space to hold tiredness without judgment. Enough space to let the day be what it was without turning it into a verdict. Enough space to remember that she belongs to something larger than any single moment. As she heads toward bed, she doesn't try to carry the ocean with her. She doesn't need to. It's already here. The storm didn't arrive suddenly. It built itself slowly the way most storms do. The sky had been heavy all afternoon, clouds layered thick and low. The light flattened into a dull gray that made time feel longer than it was. By evening, the wind picked up just enough to be noticed. Not violent, just insistent. A person stood on a small covered porch looking out at the water. The lake stretched wide and dark, its surface no longer smooth. Small waves bumped into one another, overlapping, changing direction without warning. Wind pushed them, then pulled back, then returned again. The weather app had warned about this. Gusts, possible storms. Nothing extreme, but enough to make people uneasy. Inside the house, the windows were closed. The lights were on. Everything was technically safe. And still the body felt unsettled. Not because of the storm itself, but because of what the storm represented. Uncertainty. The kind you can't argue with. The kind you can't schedule or plan around. The kind that doesn't ask for permission before it shows up. The wind rattled the porch railing. A loose chime clinked softly, irregular, slightly off rhythm. The sound should have been calming, but tonight it felt sharp, like the world tapping on the shoulder repeatedly. The mind responded the way it always does. What if this gets worse? What if something breaks? What if I should have prepared more? Thoughts moved fast, hopping from one possible outcome to another. Power outages, flooded roads, things going wrong in ways that hadn't happened yet. The body followed suit. Breath grew shallow. Muscles tightened. A subtle readiness took over, as if bracing could somehow control the weather. Fear like storms. Not because storms are dangerous, but because they are unpredictable. Unpredictability gives fear space to grow. Out on the water, a single small fishing boat moved slowly near the far edge of the lake. The motor was off. The person inside sat steady, letting the boat rise and fall with the waves rather than fighting them. It was strange to watch. From the porch, the waves looked aggressive, chaotic, like they might tip the boat at any moment. The instinct was to tense up just watching it, imagining how it would feel to be out there. But the boat stayed upright. It wasn't resisting the water. It wasn't trying to flatten the waves. It was moving with them. The sight held attention longer than expected. There was something oddly calming about the rhythm. Up, down, sideways, then steady again. The waves weren't the problem. The resistance to them would have been. The mind made the connection slowly, reluctantly. Fear had been reacting to the storm as if it were a personal threat, as if the goal was to make it stop, to calm it, to control it. But storms don't negotiate. They pass when they pass. The fisherman didn't look hurried. didn't look panicked. They weren't trying to leave the water immediately, but they weren't ignoring the storm either. The posture was alert, not rigid. Responsive, not reactive. That distinction mattered. There's a difference between attention and tension. Attention watches, tension fights. The body on the porch was tense. It had been fighting the storm from a distance, as if worry itself were a form of protection. But worry doesn't calm water. It only agitates the mind. The wind gusted again, stronger this time. Leaves skittered across the porch floor. The chime struck metal against metal, then went quiet. For a moment, fear surged. The familiar spike. The internal command to do something. But there was nothing to do. The house was secure. The door was closed. The situation hadn't changed. Only the mind had. The body noticed the railing under the hands, solid, cool. The porch floor beneath bare feet. The sound of rain beginning lightly tapping the roof in uneven patterns. These were facts. The imagined disasters were not. Fear had been trying to flatten the storm to make it behave, to restore calm through force. But the fisherman wasn't doing that. The fisherman was staying balanced. Balance didn't mean stillness. It meant responsiveness. The waves rose higher for a moment, then eased. The boat tilted, corrected, tilted again. Nothing dramatic, just movement. The storm wasn't personal. It wasn't aimed. It was simply weather doing what weather does. That realization didn't make the fear disappear, but it changed how it was held. Fear became information instead of a command. Pay attention, stay aware, but don't panic. The body on the porch mirrored that shift. Shoulders lowered slightly. Breath slowed just a touch. The grip on the railing softened. The storm was still there. The waves were still uneven. But something inside had stopped trying to make them stop. The fisherman remained on the water, moving with the rhythm instead of against it. And from the porch, watching that small, steady figure, a quiet understanding began to form. Calm doesn't mean the storm is gone. It means you've learned how to ride the waves. The storm continued, but it no longer felt like an emergency. Rain came down harder now, streaking across the surface of the lake, breaking it into 1,000 shifting patterns. The waves grew taller for a while, then settled, then rose again. Nothing followed a straight line. Everything moved in response to something else. The fishermen stayed where they were, not stubbornly, not carelessly. Just attentive, hands steady, body loose enough to adjust, firm enough not to collapse. From the porch, it became clear that the calm wasn't in the water. It was in the way the boat met the water. That's what fear often misses. It thinks peace requires smooth conditions. It believes calm only arrives when everything behaves. But life rarely offers that. Storms come in many forms, not just weather, but deadlines that pile up, plans that fall apart, news that shifts the ground under your feet. The kind of storms that don't pass in minutes or hours, but stretch across months. The instinct in those moments is to tighten, to brace, to fight the movement, to demand stability from something that is by nature unstable. That instinct is understandable. It's human. But tightening doesn't make the waves smaller. It just makes you more likely to tip. The body on the porch felt that truth in a very physical way. The muscles that had been clenched earlier were now tired. The tension hadn't kept anything safe. It had only made watching harder. Fear had promised control. What it delivered was strain. The fisherman wasn't fearless. They were aware. There's a difference. Fear says something bad is about to happen. Awareness says something is happening. Awareness responds. Fear reacts. The wind shifted direction slightly. Rain angled sideways. The fishermen adjusted their position, not dramatically, just enough. The boat stayed upright. That adjustment mattered more than strength. In life, too, it's not strength that keeps you steady in uncertainty. It's flexibility. The willingness to shift without breaking. To respond without panicking. A thought surfaced quietly. I don't need the storm to stop to be okay. That thought didn't feel like optimism. It felt like realism. The storm wasn't going to consult anyone's comfort level before moving on. Waiting for perfect conditions would mean never stepping onto the water at all. Peace in that sense isn't about control. It's about relationship. Your relationship to the waves. Your relationship to change. Your relationship to fear itself. Fear, when listened to properly, doesn't demand escape. It asks for presence. Be here. Pay attention. Stay upright. The body on the porch shifted weight from one foot to the other. The rain soaked the edge of the porch, darkening the wood. Cool air brushed skin. Sensations returned, grounding attention in the present moment instead of projected futures. The fisherman eventually turned the boat slightly, angling toward shore, not rushing, not delaying. Just choosing a moment that felt right. That choice wasn't driven by panic. It was guided by awareness. The difference was subtle, but everything. When fear leads, choices feel desperate. When awareness leads, choices feel timely. The storm began to move on slowly, without ceremony. Rain softened. Wind lost its edge. The lake remained restless, but less aggressive. The fishermen reached the shore and secured the boat. No victory pose, no relief on display, just the end of a passage. Watching that, the body on the porch felt something settle. Not safety, not certainty. Trust, not in outcomes, but in the ability to stay present through them. Storms would come again, stronger ones, quieter ones. Ones that lasted longer than expected. That wasn't in doubt. What mattered was knowing that calm wasn't something you waited for. It was something you practiced. Not by flattening waves, not by fighting the wind, but by learning how to stay balanced when everything moves. The rain stopped completely. The lake breathed out ripples, smoothing into longer lines. The porch felt still again. The storm had passed. Not because it was controlled, but because it had run its course. And the understanding remained steady as the ground beneath bare feet. You don't need the sea to be calm. You need to know how to ride it. It was late enough that the kitchen felt like a place between days. The overhead light was off. Only the small lamp near the counter was on, casting a soft, uneven glow across the island. A glass sat half full of water. Ice clinked once as it settled, then went quiet. Somewhere in the building, a dishwasher hummed distant and steady. The person stood at the counter reading a message they had already read too many times. It wasn't long. It wasn't even especially cruel. Just a sentence with a tone that caught. A line that nudged exactly where it hurt. A comment that felt unnecessary and because of that, impossible to ignore. The body reacted before the mind finished interpreting it. A quick heat in the chest, a tightening behind the ribs. The tongue pressed lightly against the back of the teeth as if already forming words. There's a specific kind of anger that shows up like this. Not explosive, more like irritation with a hook in it. The message sat there on the screen, small and contained, but it pulled. It invited a response. Not a calm one, a sharp one. Something that would put things back in balance. Something that would sting just enough. The person set the phone down on the counter, face up. The screen dimmed, but the words stayed bright in the mind. Water was poured into the glass until it reached the rim. A few drops spilled over, sliding down the side, and pooling briefly on the counter before being wiped away with the edge of a sleeve. The action was automatic grounding. The first sip was taken quickly. The second was slower. The irritation didn't leave. It lingered like something caught just inside the mouth. Not painful exactly, but impossible to forget. The urge to bite down on it, to clamp, to pull back hard. There was a memory sudden and clear of fishing as a kid. Not the quiet, patient kind, the messy kind. Hooks scattered in a metal box, fingers nicked more than once. The shock of realizing too late that a hook had gone deeper when pulled the wrong way. The worst part wasn't the initial catch. It was the instinct to yank. Hooks work because they count on that instinct. The message on the phone felt like that now. A small barb, carefully placed, waiting for movement. The person leaned their hip against the counter and stared at the walleyes, unfocused. The mind started assembling replies anyway. One version calm and firm, another sarcastic, another cutting. Each one felt satisfying in the imagination. Each one also tightened the chest a little more. The body knew this pattern, knew what came after. The brief rush of hitting send, the hollow feeling afterward, the replaying, the wondering if it went too far or not far enough. The hook doesn't disappear after you bite. It digs in. The phone buzzed again. Not a new message, just a notification from somewhere else. The sound was enough to make the jaw clench. That was when it became clear the hook wasn't just in the conversation. It was in the body now. Anger like this doesn't need much fuel. It feeds on attention, on repetition, on the simple act of chewing the same thought again and again. The person placed a hand flat on the counter. Cool surface, solid, real. The other hand wrapped loosely around the glass. The ice had melted slightly. The water tasted plain. There was a quiet recognition, not dramatic, not virtuous. I'm already hurt. Swallowing another sharp word wouldn't fix that. It would only add another thing to pull out later. The message on the phone stayed unanswered, not ignored, just left where it was. The way you might leave a splinter alone for a moment instead of digging at it with dirty fingers. The irritation shifted. It didn't go away, but it changed shape. Less sharp, more like an ache. The person thought about how often arguments grow this way. One barb leads to another. One hook swallowed invites a second. Before long, both sides are bleeding and calling it honesty. The kitchen stayed quiet. The lamp hummed faintly. The night pressed gently against the windows. Nothing had been resolved. But something important had been noticed. When you've already bitten the hook, the next kind move isn't to swallow more bait. It's to stop pulling. The kitchen didn't change while the decision settled. The lamp stayed on. The glass of water stayed where it was. The phone remained face up on the counter, silent now, like it had said its piece and stepped back to watch what would happen next. There was a strange pause that followed. Not relief, not clarity, just a moment where nothing was being added. That was new. Usually this was the point where another thought would arrive sharper than the last. Another sentence would form, demanding expression. Silence often felt like losing ground, like letting the hook do its work. But standing there, hands resting on the counter, it became clear that the real damage didn't come from the first barb. It came from the tugging. The body noticed small things. The way the tongue rested in the mouth, the slight ache in the jaw from being clenched earlier, the shoulders still raised just enough to signal tension. All of it felt like evidence of something already caught. The instinct was to pull, to answer, to restore balance by making the other person feel what you felt. That instinct is fast, almost automatic. But hooks don't come out clean when you panic. Anyone who's ever had one embedded knows this. Pulling straight back only drives it deeper. The pain spikes, the damage spreads. What could have been a careful removal becomes a wound that takes longer to heal. The person reached for the phone, then stopped. Not out of willpower, but out of a sudden understanding. Sending another message right now would be exactly that pull. Instead, the phone was turned face down, gently. No drama, just a small adjustment in direction. The irritation flared briefly in response, like a muscle protesting when you stop using it the way it's weak. Then it softened, unsure where to go without a target. A breath came in slow and shallow. Another followed, deeper, more settled. The chest loosened a little. Not all at once, just enough. Silence, it turned out, wasn't passive. It was an action. Not the kind that proves anything. The kind that prevents further harm. Forgiveness started to feel less like a decision about the other person and more like a boundary around pain. A refusal to keep feeding something that was already hurting. The message hadn't disappeared. It still existed. The words were still there, but they no longer had teeth. The hook, once noticed, lost some of its power. The person took another sip of water. The glass was nearly empty now. The sound it made as it was set down was dull, final, a small closing. There would be a later moment to respond if needed. A moment when the body wasn't reacting. A moment when words could come from steadiness instead of sting, or maybe there wouldn't be a response at all. Not every hook needs to be addressed. Some only need to be removed quietly. The dishwasher hummed on. A car passed outside. Life continued in its ordinary way, unaffected by the unsent reply. The irritation continued to fade, not into forgiveness exactly, but into space. Space where the body didn't have to stay alert. Space where the mind didn't need to sharpen itself. What remained was a clear sense of this swallowing. One more barb wouldn't make the pain smaller. It would only make it harder to heal. The night moved forward. The kitchen stayed dim and calm. The phone stayed silent. And somewhere between the counter and the quiet, the hook loosened simply because it was no longer being pulled. The hourglass sits on the shelf by the window. It's small, decorative, something that was bought without much thought and then forgotten about. Most days it blends into the background, just another object in the room. Tonight it's picked up. The glass feels smooth and cool in the hand. The sand inside is pale, almost white. It hasn't been turned in a long time. When it is flipped, the first few grains hesitate, clinging to the narrow neck before letting go. Then they begin to fall, one by one. There's something strangely calming about watching it. No rush, no effort. Just a quiet, steady movement that doesn't respond to attention. The sand doesn't fall faster because it's watched. It doesn't slow down either. It follows its own pace. The mind, on the other hand, is rarely that patient. Even as the sand begins its descent, thoughts start moving ahead. What happens when it's empty? Should I be doing something while this is happening? How much time does this represent really? The mind is already in the future. That's its habit. It skips over the present without noticing, jumping ahead to what comes next or back to what already happened. Rarely does it stay with what's actually unfolding. The sand continues to fall. A grain drops, then another, then another. Each one completes its journey fully before the next follows. There's no overlap, no stacking, no rushing to catch up. It's impossible to watch all of them at once. The mind resists this simplicity. It wants to count, to measure, to know how long until the bottom fills, how much time is left, what should be done before it runs out. That's when the familiar tension appears. The subtle pressure to get ahead of time instead of living inside it. Overthinking often comes from this exact place. From trying to live more than one moment at once. From carrying the weight of future grains while the current one is still falling. The hourglass doesn't do that. It doesn't worry about the grains that haven't dropped yet. It doesn't regret the ones that already have. It only allows what's passing through right now to pass. There's a shift in posture. The body leans closer, elbows resting on the knees. The sound of the room fades slightly as attention narrows, not in a tense way, but in a curious one. A grain falls. It's barely noticeable on its own, insignificant even. If you looked away for a second, you'd miss it entirely, and yet the entire process depends on it. The mind often dismisses the present moment because it feels too small, too ordinary, not important enough to focus on. It waits for something bigger, more meaningful, more conclusive. But the hourglass doesn't wait. It doesn't skip moments. It doesn't jump ahead. It honors each grain equally, no matter how quiet or unremarkable it is. The sand gathers slowly at the bottom. There's no drama in the accumulation, no announcement when the pile grows higher. It simply happens one grain at a time. The mind notices how hard it usually is to do this. To stay with just one thing. To live one moment without dragging others into it. Another grain falls. The breath follows it unconsciously, lengthening slightly. The shoulders soften. The jaw releases its grip. Nothing has been solved. No decision has been made. No insight has been reached. And yet, there's less urgency. Time doesn't feel like it's running out. It feels like it's passing. That difference matters. The hourglass continues its quiet work. The top chamber empties slowly, steadily. The bottom fills without complaint. There's no effort involved. The mind begins to sense that maybe it doesn't need to carry everything at once. Maybe it only needs to be present for what's falling through right now. Just this grain. Not the next one, not the last one. This one. The sand keeps falling. There's no signal when it's halfway done. No marker that says, "You're doing well," or "You should be further along by now." It doesn't speed up to make up for lost time, and it doesn't slow down to stretch the moment. It just continues. The mind notices how different this feels from the way it usually treats time. Most days, time feels like something to manage, something to chase, protect, or race against. The present moment becomes a narrow bridge, something to cross as quickly as possible so you can get to what's next. But watching the hourglass makes it clear there is no bridge. There's only falling. Another grain slips through the narrow opening. It doesn't hesitate. It doesn't check what came before it. It doesn't ask what's coming after. It just completes its one small movement. The mind tries to interfere again. What if I'm wasting time right now? What if I should be doing something more useful? What if this calm doesn't last? These thoughts arrive automatically, almost politely, as if they're trying to help. But standing here watching the sand, their urgency feels misplaced. Nothing about the hourglass suggests that watching is a waste. Nothing about the falling grains suggests that this moment needs improvement. The body adjusts slightly, settling into a more comfortable position. There's less tension in the shoulders now, less leaning forward. Breathing deepens again quietly without effort. The mind begins to understand something not as a rule, but as an experience. You can only live one grain at a time. Trying to live the next grain early doesn't make it arrive faster. Holding on to the last grain doesn't bring it back. All the effort in the world won't change the pace. And yet the mind spends so much energy trying to do exactly that. Overthinking often feels like trying to catch all the sand at once. Trying to plan regret, anticipate and control moments that aren't here yet or that are already gone. But the hourglass refuses to cooperate with that approach. It doesn't allow shortcuts. It only allows presence. The top chamber grows lighter now. The bottom grows fuller. There's no sense of loss in the transition. Nothing is disappearing. The sand isn't gone, it's just moved. That's another thing the mind tends to forget. Moments don't vanish when they pass. They change form. They settle. They become part of what supports the next moment. The sand at the bottom holds the weight of everything that came before it. Quietly, without complaint, the last few grains begin to fall more slowly. Or maybe they always fell at the same pace, and it's only now that attention has sharpened enough to notice them individually. Each one makes its own tiny descent. There's no rush to flip the hourglass yet. No need to start the cycle again. This moment hasn't finished doing what it's here to do. The mind stays with it, not forcing, not counting, just watching. This is what it feels like when overthinking loosens its grip. Not because thoughts stop, but because they no longer try to occupy multiple moments at once. The mind isn't empty, it's aligned. When the final grain drops, there's no sound, no signal, just a quiet completion that could easily be missed if you weren't paying attention. The hourglass is full at the bottom now, empty at the top. Nothing dramatic happened, and yet something feels complete. There's a gentle understanding that this is how life actually moves. Not in big leaps, not in dramatic shifts, but in small, steady moments that ask to be lived one at a time. The hourglass is set back on the shelf, not turned over again. Not yet. The room feels different now. Not because anything changed, but because nothing is being rushed. Time doesn't feel like an enemy anymore. It feels like a companion. The next moment will arrive when it arrives. The next grain will fall when it's ready. There's no need to reach for it early. For now, this moment has already landed, and that is enough. The wind is stronger than expected. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady enough to be noticed. It moves through the backyard, brushing past the fence, rustling the leaves of the plants lined up along the edge. Most of them barely respond. A few stiff branches creak and hold their ground. The bamboo does something else. It bends. Not all at once, not in a hurry. The tall green stalks lean with the wind bow slightly, then return to center when the air shifts again. There's no snapping sound, no resistance, just movement that looks almost practiced. He stands near the back door with a mug of tea cooling in his hands and watches longer than he means to. The day has been full in the quiet way. Meetings that weren't difficult but still required attention. Conversations where he listened more than he spoke. Small decisions that added up. Nothing worth complaining about, yet his chest feels tight anyway. He's used to that feeling. For most of his life, he's believed that being strong meant holding firm, staying solid, keeping everything contained so nothing spills out where it shouldn't. He learned early how to keep his thoughts inside, how to manage reactions, how to be the one people could rely on. Reliable doesn't bend. Reliable doesn't waver. At least that's what he told himself. The bamboo leans again, this time further. A stronger gust passes through, and the stalks bow deeply, almost parallel to the ground. For a split second, he expects to hear something crack. Nothing does. When the wind eases, the bamboo rises back up unchanged. He exhales without realizing he was holding his breath. there's something unsettling about how simple it looks. He's spent years tightening himself against pressure, bracing, locking down emotions before they become visible, filling every quiet space with control so nothing unexpected can enter. He's been praised for it, for being calm, for being steady, for not making things harder than they already are. But lately that steadiness has started to feel heavy. He takes a sip of the tea. It's already lukewarm. He doesn't mind. The warmth spreads anyway. Inside the house, the clock ticks faintly. A dishwasher hums. Ordinary sounds continuing without his input. The world doesn't seem to require his constant grip the way he's assumed it does. Another gust passes through the yard. The bamboo bends again. He notices something he hadn't before. The stalks are hollow. He's seen bamboo cut open before, clean, empty centers running the length of each piece. That emptiness isn't weakness. It's what allows the plant to move without breaking. A solid trunk would snap under this kind of pressure. Hollow space gives room. The thought lands quietly without explanation. He's been filling himself for years, filling silence with answers, filling uncertainty with plans, filling discomfort with effort, as if emptiness were something dangerous that needed to be avoided. But what if the opposite is true? What if the tightness in his chest doesn't come from being too weak, but from being too full? He shifts his weight and leans against the doorframe. His shoulders drop slightly. The sensation surprises him. He didn't tell them to relax. They just did. There are things he carries that don't belong to him anymore. Old expectations. Roles he grew into because they were needed once. Habits of self-control that kept him safe, then slowly became cages. He's never questioned them. Letting go felt irresponsible, like leaving a post unmanned. But the bamboo doesn't guard against the wind. It cooperates with it. Another thought follows softer. Maybe strength isn't about staying rigid. Maybe it's about staying open. The idea doesn't demand action. It doesn't ask him to change anything tonight. It simply creates space. The wind eases. The bamboo stands tall again, green and quiet, as if nothing happened at all. He finishes the tea and sets the mug down on the counter. His hands feel looser, his breathing slower. Nothing dramatic has shifted. No insight he needs to explain later. Just a subtle release. He looks back at the yard one more time. The bamboo waits. The wind will come again, and it will bend again without fear. Something in him recognizes that rhythm, not as a lesson, as a possibility. Later that evening, the wind settles. Not completely. It still moves through the yard now and then, but with less insistence. The bamboo sways more gently, like it's breathing rather than reacting. He sits at the kitchen table with a folded towel in front of him, hands resting on either side. The house is quiet, in the way it only gets after a long day has fully ended. No expectations left hanging. No one needing anything from him right now. He notices how unusual that feels. For years, he's carried the sense that something must always be held in place. A decision, a mood, a situation that could slip if he didn't keep pressure on it. Even in quiet moments, his body stayed alert, prepared to intervene, prepared for what he's never been sure. He looks down at his hands. The skin is dry from washing dishes earlier. Fine lines cross his palms, familiar as a map he's learned to read without thinking. These hands have fixed things, carried things, steadied other people when they needed it. They've also clenched often without permission. He presses his palms flat against the table and feels the solid surface beneath them. It doesn't move. It doesn't need him to brace it. The simple contact sends a small signal through his arms, grounding him in a way that feels new. He realizes that much of his strength has come from holding on, holding opinions steady, holding emotions back, holding himself together when it felt like things might unravel if he didn't. That kind of strength works for a while, but it's tiring. The bamboo outside doesn't look tired. It doesn't accumulate tension. It releases it with every movement. Each bend is temporary. Each return to center happens naturally without effort or self-congratulation. He's never allowed himself that. He's believed that if he loosens his grip even slightly, something important will be lost. That calm depends on constant control. That letting go means letting things fall apart. But nothing fell apart when he stopped watching the yard. Nothing fell apart when he set the mug down and walked away. Nothing fell apart when he leaned instead of braced. The realization isn't comforting at first. It's unsettling. If the world doesn't require his constant tension, then how much of his effort has been unnecessary? He sits with that question for a moment, not trying to answer it. The towel stays folded. The clock ticks. Outside, a light breeze passes through again, and the bamboo responds as it always does. He thinks about the hollow center, about how empty space isn't absence, it's allowance. It's what lets movement pass through without damage. It's what keeps the stalk intact when pressure arrives. He's spent so much time filling himself with responsibility that there's been no room left to bend, no room to feel without fixing, no room to listen without planning a response, no room to rest without guilt. He doesn't need to empty himself completely. He just needs to stop packing himself so tightly. He stands and moves to the sink, rinsing his hands under warm water. The sensation is simple and grounding. Water flows over his skin, then disappears down the drain. Nothing held, nothing saved. He dries his hands and notices how natural the motion feels. Letting go isn't dramatic. It's practical. Back at the table, he sits again, posture easier now. Not slouched, just unforced. His breath moves without instruction, in and out. No commentary. He understands something quietly important. Being open doesn't mean being weak. Being hollow doesn't mean being empty. It means there's space for life to move through without breaking him. The wind outside fades completely now. The bamboo stands still, not rigid, just resting. Tomorrow there will be pressure again. Expectations, conversations, moments that ask something of him. He knows that. The world hasn't changed. But the way he meets it might. He doesn't need to harden to be strong. He doesn't need to brace to be steady. He doesn't need to fill every space to be whole. He turns off the kitchen light and walks down the hallway, the house settling into darkness behind him. The bamboo remains where it is rooted and flexible, ready for whatever comes next. And for the first time in a long while, he feels the same. Not because he's holding himself together, but because he isn't. It wasn't that the future felt dark. It felt distant, like something just out of view, not because it was hidden, but because the angle was wrong. A person stood in the kitchen late at night, one light still on above the sink. The rest of the house had already settled. The dishwasher hummed quietly, water moving in a steady rhythm behind a closed door. On the counter, a phone lay face up, screen dark, finally resting. The body leaned against the counter, weight shifted onto one hip. The posture wasn't tense. It was tired in a softer way, like someone who had been holding something too long and hadn't realized it yet. Thoughts drifted toward the future, as they often do at this hour. What's next? Am I heading in the right direction? What if I'm already behind? The questions didn't come with panic. They came with a dull pressure, a sense of being slightly off balance. As if life were moving forward and somehow quietly, they weren't. Fear doesn't always shout. Sometimes it nudges. The mind began reviewing the past, not because it wanted nostalgia, but because the past felt solid, finished, known. Earlier decisions replayed themselves. Turns that had been taken, turns that hadn't. Conversations that could have gone differently. Opportunities that might have mattered more than they seemed at the time. The mind walked backward through memory step by step, trying to understand how things had landed here. The trouble was, while the mind walked backward, life kept moving forward. That mismatch created the unease. The future felt frightening, not because it was threatening, but because it wasn't being faced directly. It was being approached with eyes turned behind, checking where the feet had already been. Anyone who's tried to walk that way knows the feeling. You can move, but you don't trust your steps. Every shift of weight feels uncertain. You're more likely to stumble not because the ground is unsafe, but because you can't see where you're going. The body picked up a glass from the counter and filled it with water. The sound of it pouring cut cleanly through the thoughts. Clear, immediate. The glass was set down. Fingers felt the cool condensation, a simple anchor. Still, the mind wandered back again. Other people seemed further along. They figured it out sooner. I should have known by now. Comparison slipped in quietly, dressed as concern. Fear loves comparison because it gives the illusion of measurement. If you can place yourself on a scale, you can decide whether to rush, panic, or give up. But scales only work when everyone is moving in the same direction. The truth was, no one else's path could be seen clearly from here. Only fragments, only highlights, only outcomes, never the confusion that came before them. The dishwasher clicked, shifting to a new cycle. The sound changed slightly, then settled again. Ordinary, reassuring. The body noticed something, then the way the shoulders were slightly hunched as if bracing for a collision that hadn't happened yet. The jaw held a quiet tension. Breath stayed shallow, hovering near the chest. Fear had crept in through posture, not thoughts. It wasn't afraid of what would happen next. It was afraid of stepping forward without certainty. The future asks for movement without guarantees. The past offers clarity but no direction. So the mind does what feels safest. It looks back while moving forward. But that safety is an illusion. Walking backward doesn't stop motion. It just makes it harder. The glass of water was lifted and sipped. Coolness spread through the chest. The sensation was immediate, undeniable. Right now was happening whether or not the future felt clear. The kitchen light buzzed faintly. The hum of appliances continued. The body stood here breathing, supported by the floor beneath bare feet. These were facts. The imagined judgments of the future were not. Fear had turned the future into a threat by making it unknown. But the future had always been unknown. The only difference now was how tightly the mind was gripping the need to understand it in advance. There was a moment's small quiet when attention shifted away from the timeline entirely. Not to answers, to orientation. What if the problem isn't where I'm going, but how I'm looking? The thought didn't resolve anything. It didn't calm everything down, but it loosened something. The body straightened slightly, shoulders rolled back, breath dropped a little lower. Not confidence, just alignment. The future didn't need to be solved tonight. It needed to be faced. Walking forward doesn't mean knowing the destination. It means trusting your ability to take the next step while looking ahead. The phone remained dark. No new information arrived. Nothing external changed. But inside, the realization settled gently. Fear of the future can come from moving the right way, with your gaze turned the wrong direction. The dishwasher continued its steady work. The kitchen stayed warm and quiet. And for the first time that night, the idea of tomorrow felt less like a wall and more like open space, still unknown, still wide, but no longer approached in reverse. The future didn't move any closer. It stayed where it always is, just ahead, undefined, not asking to be solved all at once. What changed wasn't the distance. It was the stance. The body stood more evenly now, weight distributed, instead of leaning away from something unseen. The subtle shift felt physical before it felt mental. Like adjusting your footing before realizing you were off balance. Fear had been doing what it does best, trying to protect by reviewing what had already happened. The past felt safer because it was complete. Every mistake already known. Every success already measured. Nothing left to surprise you there, but safety and growth don't live in the same direction. The past can explain, but it can't guide. It can inform, but it can't lead. The dishwasher hummed on, indifferent to timelines. Water moved, heat cycled. The machine didn't worry about whether it was ahead or behind schedule. It just did the next right thing in its sequence. There was something instructive in that simplicity. The mind often wants a map before it moves. It wants guarantees before it commits weight to the next step. But life doesn't hand out maps in advance. It offers ground one step at a time. Walking backward through life feels careful. It feels responsible. But it creates tension because the body is always bracing for what it can't see. Fear thrives in that posture. Facing forward doesn't mean rushing. It means orienting your attention toward what's actually arriving. The body turned slightly, opening toward the room instead of the counter. A small movement, almost meaningless. But it aligned. The spine opened, the chest invited breath to move more freely. The future wasn't something to crash into. It was something to meet. The thoughts about being behind still surfaced, but they no longer stuck as tightly. They floated by like passing cars on a street, noticeable but not in control. Comparison lost some of its grip once attention returned to direction. Everyone looks ahead at a different pace. Everyone steps onto the unknown from a different place. There is no universal timeline, only movement. The glass of water was empty now. It was rinsed and placed upside down in the rack. The action was simple, complete. One small thing finished. That mattered. Finishing something, even something small, reminds the body that forward motion is possible without having the whole future planned. Fear often disguises itself as caution, but caution that prevents movement isn't caution, it's hesitation. The difference becomes clear when you feel it in your muscles. Hesitation tightens. It pulls you backward. It keeps your eyes on where you've already been. Movement loosens. It allows uncertainty without demanding certainty. The future still held questions: career, direction, identity. None of that had been answered in the kitchen that night. But something more important had shifted. The need to answer everything before stepping forward had eased. Facing forward doesn't mean ignoring the past. It means letting it be behind you. The past had already done its work. It had shaped skills, values, preferences. It didn't need to be carried like a rear-view mirror pressed against the face. The road ahead didn't require speed. It required sight. Seeing what's in front of you. Responding to what shows up next. The kitchen light was turned off. The room dimmed, but not completely. The ambient glow from outside softened the edges. Darkness felt navigable now, not disorienting. Walking forward doesn't guarantee safety. It guarantees engagement. And engagement is what fear has been asking for all along. Not avoidance, not rehearsal, but presence. The body moved toward the hallway. Each step landed where it landed. No slipping, no stumbling, just walking. The future didn't rush in. It waited as it always does. And this time it was being approached face first. The grocery parking lot was louder than it needed to be. Carts rattled over uneven pavement. Car doors opened and closed too hard. Somewhere a horn was held a second longer than necessary. The sky hung low and gray, pressing down on everything, making even small sounds feel sharp. The person stood beside their car with the trunk open, one hand gripping a grocery bag, the other resting on the edge of the hatch. The bag was heavier than expected. Not because of what was inside, but because of how the body was holding itself. Tight, alert, ready. Earlier that day, everything had started piling up. Emails marked urgent, conversations that went nowhere, a last-minute change that unraveled careful plans, none of it catastrophic, all of it irritating in a way that stacked. Now it felt like the world was daring them to snap. Someone brushed past too close with a cart. Another car pulled into a spot, aggressively, tires squealing slightly. A voice nearby rose in frustration over something small and already lost. The chest tightened. The body leaned forward just a little, as if bracing against incoming weather. Anger in moments like this doesn't need a single cause. It feeds on accumulation. The grocery bag was lifted into the trunk and set down harder than intended. Cans clinked together loud and metallic. The sound echoed in the hollow space and then vanished. The mind immediately offered commentary. Of course this happens now. Why is everyone so careless? Can't anyone slow down? Each thought sharpened the next. The storm wasn't just outside, it was inside. The person closed the trunk part way, then stopped. The latch hovered inches from locking suspended. There was a memory not from today, but from long ago. Sitting through a storm as a kid. Rain pounding the roof so hard, it sounded like something trying to break in. Wind howling around corners, bending trees into unfamiliar shapes. And then the quiet. Not the end of the storm, but its center. The eye. A place where everything paused, where the air went still, where the chaos circled at a distance loud, but no longer on top of you. That memory came back now with surprising clarity. The trunk was closed gently this time. The sound was solid, final, but not aggressive. The hand stayed there for a moment longer than necessary, palm flat against the cool metal. The body noticed its own posture. Shoulders lifted, jaw set, breath shallow. All signs of fighting weather. The parking lot hadn't done anything personal. Neither had the people in it. They were all just moving through their own versions of the same pressure. The person stepped back from the car and leaned lightly against it. The metal was cool through clothing, grounding. The noise didn't stop, but it changed in relation to the body. It was no longer everywhere. It was around. A cart clattered by. A child cried briefly, then quieted. An engine turned over and drove away. Sounds layered on top of each other, messy and human. The breath slowed just a fraction. The realization didn't arrive as wisdom. It arrived as relief. I don't have to match this pace. Anger had been pushing the body to meet the storm head on. To harden. To brace. To move faster and louder, just to stay upright. But standing here back against the car, it became clear how unnecessary that was. Storms don't respond to force. They don't calm because you yell back. They pass when they pass. The person stayed still for another moment. Not to meditate, not to escape, just to stop feeding the momentum. The mind tried once more to list grievances, to tally up reasons for irritation. It didn't get far. Without the body's full cooperation, the thoughts lost their edge. They became observations instead of weapons. The parking lot remained chaotic. Nothing had changed out there, but inside, something had. The storm was still happening, but the person was no longer standing in its center. They had stepped just slightly into a quieter place within it. And for the first time all day, that felt like enough. The parking lot didn't quiet down. If anything, it grew busier. Another row of cars arrived at once. A cart tipped over somewhere, metal clanging sharply before someone righted it. Voices overlapped, impatient, distracted, already late for something else. But leaning against the car, the person noticed something unexpected. The noise didn't feel as close. It was still loud, still messy, still irritating if examined too closely. But it no longer pressed directly against the chest. It hovered at a small distance, like weather seen through a window, instead of felt on bare skin. The breath found a slower rhythm without being guided. In through the nose, out through the mouth, not deep, not deliberate, just less hurried. The body had stopped trying to win. Earlier, anger had felt necessary, like armor, like the only way to move through all this friction without being knocked over. But armor is heavy, and wearing it for too long makes even standing feel like work. Standing here now, the person felt the difference immediately. The shoulders softened, the hands unclenched, the jaw loosened just enough to notice it had been tight all along. The storm continued to circle. A driver argued loudly with someone over a parking spot. A cart bumped the car lightly and rolled away. Someone muttered an apology without slowing down. None of it required a response. That realization carried an unexpected relief. So much anger is born from the belief that everything needs answering, that every disruption is a challenge, that every careless moment must be corrected or endured with force. But storms don't ask for engagement. They ask for shelter. The person thought again of that childhood memory, of sitting inside while rain lashed the roof, listening to the wind move around the house, feeling the violence of it without being pulled into it. The eye of the storm isn't created by fighting the wind. It exists because of where you stand. The hand lifted from the car and rested briefly over the chest. The heartbeat felt steady, present, not rushed. Forgiveness in this moment didn't feel like kindness toward anyone else in the parking lot. It felt like permission. Permission not to absorb the chaos. Permission not to harden in response. Permission to let the storm stay outside. The anger hadn't disappeared. It still flickered now and then, especially when a sound cut too sharply or someone moved too abruptly. But it no longer dictated posture or pace. It was weather, not identity. The person reached into the trunk again, this time calmly, and picked up the last bag. The weight felt different now, not lighter, but easier to carry. Walking toward the cart returned, the noise shifted again. The storm closed in slightly, then moved past. The body adjusted without panic. This was the eye, not silence, not control. Just a place inside that stayed steady while everything else spun. There would be other days like this. Other crowded places. Other moments where irritation stacked until it felt personal and unavoidable. But now, there was a reference point. A knowing that calm doesn't require the world to cooperate. It requires a decision not to join the frenzy. The cart slid into place with a dull final sound. The person turned back toward the car. The sky remained gray. The parking lot remained loud. None of that needed fixing. The door opened. The seat welcomed the body. The door closed again, sealing off some of the noise, but not all of it. The engine started. The dashboard lights glowed softly. As the car pulled out of the lot, the storm was still there, swirling impatient, unchanged. But the person carried the eye with them, and that was enough to move forward without anger choosing the direction. Wherever you are tonight, I'm grateful you chose to spend this quiet time here. If these stories help you rest, you're welcome to subscribe and return whenever you need a gentle place to land. And now, you don't need to do anything more. Let the night hold what you can't carry. And if sleep comes, let it come.